The date is November 2nd, 1944. High above, the roar of American B-17 bombers fills the air, signaling yet another raid. But down on the runway of Brandes Airfield, Lieutenant Gunter Andreas is preparing to unleash a weapon unlike anything the world has ever seen. He is strapped into the cockpit of an interceptor that looks more like a bullet than a plane to me 163. Komet. It is the only rocket-powered aircraft to ever enter combat, and at this precise moment in history, it holds the title of the fastest machine in the sky. Andreas gently pulls back on the flight stick. A split second later, he hauls it back hard. The force of the rocket engine kicks in, slamming him deep into his seat as the aircraft tears away from the ground, rocketing straight up into the heavens. His eyes dart to the airspeed indicator, which is already surging past 400 miles per hour. He is not alone. A squadron of 15 other pilots, all flying these volatile Komets, joins him. Their mission is critical: defend the synthetic fuel plants from the crushing Allied offensive. This flight marks the single largest Komet mission ever attempted. The comets ascend almost vertically, climbing at a speed that defies logic. The gravitational forces bear down on Andreas, crushing his chest, pinning him against the back of the cockpit. Then, in the blink of an eye, the turbulence vanishes. He bursts through the cloud layer into the crisp, blue sky and blinding sunshine. Andreas immediately cuts the engine to idle. The Komet carries precious little fuel, and he must glide to preserve it. He levels out the aircraft and looks ahead. What he witnesses next takes his breath away. Stretching across the horizon is a seemingly infinite line of metal. It is an armada of 2,000 Allied aircraft, thundering straight toward their objective 900 heavy bombers, protected by a swarm of 1,100 escort fighters flying in tight defensive formation. Upon spotting the massive target, the German squadron scatters to attack from different angles. Andreas and his close friend Oberfeldwebel Jakob Belenrith positioned themselves for the maneuver the Komet was designed for: a high-speed dive. As they close the distance to the enemy fleet, Andreas glances over at Belenrith's plane. A heavy realization setting in this sortie could easily be their last. Belenrith peels away first, beginning his attack run. Andreas jams the throttle forward and tips the nose of his rocket plane down, diving straight at the heart of the formation. The bombers expand rapidly in his vision. Because of his extreme speed, the massive B-17s appear to be frozen in the sky, standing still as he rushes toward them. He has a window of opportunity lasting only a few seconds. He lines up his sights and squeezes the trigger. His twin 30mm cannons erupt, spitting a lightning-fast volley of explosive shells. He sees the impacts peppering the wing of a B-17 flying fortress just before he screams underneath the formation. Diving out of range of their defensive machine guns, he has drawn blood, causing damage, but the bomber is still flying. It isn't a fatal blow. As he looks back, he realizes his efforts are far from enough. The bomber formation opens its bay doors, and thousands of pounds of deadly ordnance rain down upon the fuel plant below, completing their mission. Andreas checks his fuel gauge. He still has a few minutes of power left. He refuses to give up. The fleet of B-17s begins its slow turn toward home, but some of the wounded fortresses are trailing behind the main group, perfect prey for a hunter. Andreas commits to a second pass. He swings underneath the formation, once again idling his engine to save every drop of fuel. The dark, looming silhouettes of the bombers pass overhead as he stalks them from below. Once he is in position, he slams the throttle to maximum. The reaction is violent. It feels as though he has been kicked in the spine. The rocket engine unleashes its remaining fury, consuming the last of the fuel to propel the aircraft to nearly 600 miles per hour. Andreas pulls up, rocketing from the depths to attack the belly of the bomber. But he has been spotted. The ball turret gunner on the B-17 tracks the incoming rocket and swiftly rotates his guns to meet the threat. The German pilot locks his crosshairs on the metal beast and opens fire. Disaster strikes immediately. One of his cannons jams, but he is fully committed to the attack. There is no turning back. Simultaneously, the American gunner brings his twin heavy machine guns to bear. The sky erupts in noise as the two men trade fire. Andreas holds his course steady, even as .50 caliber rounds zip past his canopy. His single working cannon pounds the underside of the B-17. He is moving like a bat out of hell, a difficult target, but the American gunner finds his mark. A single bullet shatters the canopy and tears through the cockpit. Shrapnel slices into Andreas's forehead just above his left eye. The rest of the bullet punches through the armored plate behind his seat and pierces the fuel tank. In an instant, his confidence evaporates. The tank behind him is filled with a highly volatile chemical mixture, notorious for spontaneous explosions and for melting the flesh of pilots if it leaks. Andreas knows he is sitting on a ticking time bomb. He tries to break off, banking hard to escape the bomber's range. He dives away immediately. Tracers streak past his wings, but his speed saves him, and he escapes their grasp within seconds. Andreas knows his aircraft is likely to disintegrate in a ball of fire at any moment. Calmly but quickly, he unbuckles his harness and reaches up to jettison the canopy. He pushes, but it refuses to budge. Panic begins to set in. Pushes harder, straining against the immense air pressure that is pinning the canopy down. Unknown to him, he is being hunted. Captain Fred Glover, the commanding officer of the 336th Fighter Squadron, has been tracking the rocket plane from his P-51 Mustang. "Got one intercepting," Glover calls out. Spotting the white contrail of the Komet, the American ace turns hard to starboard, sliding directly behind Andreas's crippled plane. Andreas spots the Mustang in his mirror and instinctively pushes the stick forward, trying to dive. But the Mustang unleashes a torrent of .50 caliber fire. Glover roars past and Andreas slams the throttle forward to escape, but nothing happens. The rocket is silent, is completely out of fuel. Andreas glances over his shoulder and sees the Mustang banking around for another pass. He tries the canopy again, desperate to bail out, but it remains sealed shut. Looks back up to see the terrifying sight of 6 heavy machine guns pointed directly at his face. Glover holds down the trigger, raining hell upon the tiny, gliding rocket ship. The Komet begins to shed parts. Tire panels peel away, exposing the internal machinery. The American bullets puncture the remaining fuel tanks, and the vapors ignite. A terrifying fire erupts across the underside of the Komet. Andreas flips his small plane upside down and dives, feeling the vibrations of bullets tearing his aircraft apart from underneath. The Mustang turns and follows, staying hot on his heels, firing a relentless stream of lead. Andreas still has one card left to play. Even though Glover has a working engine, the Me-163 is aerodynamically superior in a high-speed dive. It might just be able to outrun the P-51 in a free fall, even without power. Glover realizes his window is closing and gives it everything he has, ripping the fragile German fighter to shreds. Andreas's time is measured in seconds. But suddenly, more shapes emerge from the clouds. More Komets. It is the rest of his squadron arriving at the scene. "It's your lucky day, Komet." Glover breaks off the chase to engage the new threats, leaving Andreas to his fate that looks grim. Andreas holds the steep dive, praying that the sheer speed of the airflow will blow out the chemical fire raging inside his fuselage. Miraculously, it works. The rushing wind snuffs out the flames and Andreas levels out. But the relief is short-lived. The fire reignites with a vengeance. The 2 rocket fuels are mixing, creating a chemical reaction impossible to extinguish. He has to get out now. Meanwhile, nearby, his friend Jakob Belenrith is diving onto another bomber formation. He fires a burst of shells, breaking the top of a flying fortress. As Belenrith rockets past and pulls back the throttle to glide, a P-51 piloted by Captain Louis Norley is lying in wait. Belenrith zooms into the scene, unaware of the ambush. Norley throttles up. Belenrith isn't checking his 6. He is focused on fuel management for his next run. Suddenly, tracers flash past his cockpit. He reacts instantly, pulling into an evasive maneuver and diving for speed. Norley turns and follows him down. Belenrith looks back and sees the Mustang glued to his tail, firing a deluge of bullets. He knows the Komet is faster, but he cannot risk taking a hit. He turns hard to the left to dodge the crosshairs. It works, but the maneuver costs him the one thing he needs most: speed. The Mustang presses the advantage, pulling tight to bring his guns to bear. Belenrith hauls on the stick, forcing his little machine to turn as tightly as physics will allow, trying to force the Mustang to overshoot. But Norley anticipates the move. He predicts the Komet's path, leads the target, and pulls the trigger. Bullets arc through the air and slam into the Comet's rear fuselage. Bellenrith ducks low in his cockpit as the sickening sound of metal being torn apart reverberates through the air. Then, silence. The Mustang flies past him. This is his chance. Bellenrith levels out and punches the throttle to full power to escape. But instead of the roar of the rocket, there is a loud bang. The American fire has critically damaged the engine. It is seized up. With zero thrust and no time to think, he tries to restart it, but it's hopeless. Mustang turns back. Jacob sees it coming. He is a sitting duck. There's nothing he can do. Norley opens fire. The heavy bullets tear through the small aircraft from tail to cockpit. Flames flicker from the bullet holes as the Komet rolls over, spiraling out of control. Back in the first Komet, Andreas is still fighting a losing battle against his burning plane. He pushes against the stuck canopy, adrenaline surging through his veins as he feels the heat of the chemical fire bleeding through his seat. He is moments away from burning alive. The canopy cracks open briefly, but slams shut again. Then realization hits him. It's the wind pressure. He grabs the controls and pulls the nose up hard, deliberately bleeding off his speed. As the plane slows, the pressure decreases. He pushes the canopy again, and this time, it swings open easily. Andreas rolls the fighter over and falls out into the open air, escaping with his life mere seconds before the end. As his parachute snaps open, drifting silently toward the earth, he sees a streak of fire in the distance. It is the remains of Bellenrith's Komet, nosediving into the ground. Andreas watches it impact. No parachute opens. Jacobi Bellenrith never made it out. He lost his life in the chaotic battle. His aircraft was the last Komet ever to be shot down by a P-51 Mustang. It is the dead of night, 1 a.m. on November 1st, 1943. The North Atlantic is in the grip of a ferocious storm. Its waves, towering 15 feet high, crash against the steel hull of the USS Borie, an American destroyer on a lonely hunt in the dark. Suddenly, a blip glows on the radar screen. Contact, 8,000 yards. The man in command is Lieutenant Charles Harris Hutchins, a young officer of only 30 years. Without hesitation, he issues the order to give chase at maximum velocity. The USS Borie surges forward at flank speed, its engines roaring as it smashes through the massive swells, closing the distance on the invisible target. 5 nautical miles away, unseen in the darkness, lies the prey. U-405, a German Type 7C submarine, commanded by Corvette Captain Rolf Heinrich Hauptmann. The U-boat is floating on the surface, using the cover of the violent storm to recharge its batteries. But deep inside the iron belly of the vessel, the hydrophone operator freezes. Through his headset, he picks up a terrifying rhythmic sound, the unmistakable churning of heavy propellers slicing through the water. Hauptmann knows instantly that there are no friendly ships in this sector. It has to be an American hunter. Alarms scream through the submarine, and the 45-man crew scrambles in a panic to dive beneath the safety of the waves. Back on the bridge of the USS Borie, Hutchins strains his eyes against the black horizon. He cannot see a thing. He relies entirely on the voice of his radar operator, calling out updates. Bearing 265. Closing. But then the signal vanishes. The radar screen goes empty. The U-boat has submerged. A chill runs down Hutchins' spine. The Germans know they are being hunted. The chase has now shifted from the surface to the depths, turning into a deadly game of cat and mouse. Switch to sonar, Hutchins commands. Now they must listen for the echo of the enemy in the deep. Sonar contact, calls the operator, 2,000 yards, bearing 170. Hutchins orders the ship to turn, banking hard to intercept the submerged ghost. Inside the U-boat, the tension is suffocating. The hydrophone operator listens as the sound of the destroyer's propellers grows louder, passing dangerously close. He hears the active sonar pinging off their hull, the electronic sound of a predator locking onto its prey. On the Borie, the sonar team tracks the submarine drifting into lethal range. Range 600 yards. The crew rushes across the wet, heaving deck, preparing the depth charge racks. But suddenly, the signal shifts wildly. The cunning German captain has steered his boat directly beneath the destroyer's keel to confuse the sensors. Hard to starboard, Hutchins yells. He swings the ship's stern around violently to bring the weapons to bear. Fire, The heavy explosive canisters launch into the air, splashing into the turbulent sea right where the U-boat's nose is predicted to be. Below the surface, the ocean erupts. The shock waves hammer the U-405 like a giant fist. The pressure hull buckles, and water begins to spray into the submarine. Hopman knows they cannot stay submerged. The pressure will crush them. He has no choice. He orders the boat to surface and man the guns. On the Borie, sailors watch the water churn from the explosions. Suddenly, the sea boils over, and the massive gray shape of the U-boat bursts from the depths. Turn on the searchlight. A blinding beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating the U-405. The scene that follows is pure chaos. German sailors pour out of the hatches, rushing to their deck guns, knowing they must fight or die. The U-boat's 20mm cannons open fire immediately. Loud bangs echo over the waves as tracer shells streak through the night, slamming into the Borie's hull and forcing American sailors to dive for cover. But the Germans know they need more firepower. They desperately try to ready their main weapon, the powerful 88mm deck gun. Hutchins sees the danger and acts swiftly. The Borie's guns open fire. The first few rounds miss, splashing into the water, but the American gunners quickly find their mark. A storm of 20mm shells tears through the U-boat's conning tower, devastating the German gunners. Wave after wave of brave German sailors try to reach the 88mm gun, but they are mowed down by a wall of American fire. Finally, a direct hit from the Borie's 4-inch main gun destroys the 88mm weapon and its crew entirely. The Borie continues to circle and pound the enemy, but Hutchins realizes the submarine isn't sinking fast enough. He needs to deliver a fatal blow. He decides to ram the enemy. Stand by for a ram. The warning booms over the ship. The destroyer barrels down at 27 knots and crashes directly into the side of U-405. The impact crumples the Borie's bow. Deep in the engine room, Chief Engineer Kenneth Miles Lucas watches in horror as water gushes in through the cracked hull. Up on deck, the two ships are locked together, grinding against each other in the waves. A massive, close-quarters firefight breaks out. It is a scene of madness. The American sailors, looking down from the higher deck, fire Tommy guns, pistols, and rifles. Those without guns grab whatever they can find, flare pistols, empty shell casings, and even kitchen knives, throwing them at the Germans below. The U-boat crew fights back, but they are exposed and outgunned. The U-405 manages to pull away, its engines straining to slip out from under the destroyer. The Americans watch it slide free, but the Borie is wounded too. The engine room is flooding, and the ship is heavy with water. Engineer Lucas and his men fight waist-deep in freezing water to keep the turbines turning. Hutchins tries to finish it with a torpedo. The weapon launches but misses in the heavy swells. Captain Hopman, now down to only 15 survivors from his crew of 45, is desperate. He decides to fire a Hail Mary torpedo from his stern. He turns his boat to aim. Hutchins sees the U-boat turning and realizes the searchlight is helping the Germans aim. Disable the searchlight. The ocean plunges back into darkness. Hopman is confused by the sudden blackness and hesitates. Enable the searchlight. Hutchins commands again. The light snaps back on, blinding the Germans. U-boat is right in front of them. Hutchins tries to ram again, but the U-boat is nimble and twists away. However, Hutchins refuses to let them go. He swings the destroyer's stern hard, bringing the depth charge racks right over the passing submarine. Fire depth charges. The explosives land perfectly around the enemy ship. The blasts lift the U-boat out of the water, shattering its hull beyond repair. It is over. Silence falls over the water. A flare shoots up from the sinking U-boat, a signal of surrender. The 15 survivors inflate life rafts as their ship disappears beneath the waves. The USS Borie moves closer to rescue them, but suddenly a lookout screams. Flare in the distance. Torpedo incoming. The crew freezes. They assume a second U-boat has arrived. Hutchins has to make a split-second decision to save his ship. He orders a hard turn to present a smaller target to the incoming torpedo. But this maneuver sends the massive destroyer plowing directly through the German life rafts. The crew of the Borie watches in horror as they are forced to leave the men they just defeated. No rescue would ever come. The captain and the remaining crew of U-405 were all lost to the Atlantic. The USS Borie had won the battle, but the ship was mortally wounded. The flooding was uncontrollable. Engineer Lucas and his team kept the engines running until the very last moment, escaping just before the ship had to be abandoned. Tragically, the sea claimed 27 of the Borie's crew before rescue ships arrived. Both Lieutenant Hutchins and Engineer Lucas survived the war, with Hutchins receiving the Navy Cross for his relentless leadership in one of the most brutal surface battles of World War II.